Hello my Beatles friends, welcome back to another video. Took me a couple of days more to make this video, but here I am. Today's video I'd like to dedicate to an innovative aspect of Beatles sounds and the Beatles as innovators and creators in general. What do I mean by that? Not every sound on Beatles record was studio effects or synthesizers or conventional instrument that we know. Some of them were unusual objects. And in this video, I would like to mention some unusual instruments / objects that were used on Beatles records. By the end of this video, I hope you will realize what sounds you're actually hearing on those records. I mean, what instruments that were used, and you won't be able to unhear it. I would like to start with the easiest one and commonly known, and it's not news to anyone. The song I Feel Fine. We all know that it starts with a very strange feedback. This is the common knowledge that Lennon put his guitar on the amp and it started to make a feedback and he liked the sound, and then that feedback was not accident, that was already intentionally controlled sound. This is one of the things that Beatles actually invented. Another unusual instrument that was actually used on Beatles records is on Strawberry Fields Forever they used mellotron. This is not something the Western rock musicians actually used. It sounds like a flute, but it's not a flute. It's a mellotron played by Paul. As we all know, in the movie Hard Day's Night, there is a scene where Lennon is sitting on a couch and he's playing with a small piano kind of toy, and the motive of what he's playing there actually resembles Strawberry Fields, the opening of the Strawberry Fields. I seriously doubt that he began writing Strawberry Fields Forever in early '64, but you never know. John Lennon loved it because it sounded unreal, like a memory rather than a performance. This machine didn't just appear on a Beatles record, it helped define psychedelic music itself. Another strange instrument also used on Penny Lane, piccolo trumpet, played by David Mason. After Paul McCartney saw on the TV the orchestra playing, he liked the sound of it and he told George Martin to invite the musician to the studio, and he used it on the Penny Lane. Another era of Beatles strange instruments, the Indian section, of course. The first and most important is that Beatles were recording in 1965, they were recording Norwegian Wood, and something was missing. And there was a sitar in the studio, and George Harrison, great George Harrison, found the notes on the sitar and played it. And that hit the spot. And that sparkled his interest in Indian music, and there are 3 other songs that actually have variety of Indian instruments. This is The Inner Light, Love You Too, and Within You Without You. On Love You Too, we have instruments that are sitar, tabla, and tambura, naturally played by Indian musicians. On Within You Without You, we have only George playing with additional Indian instruments, which are difficult to pronounce: Dilruba, Shwermandal, and tabla ensemble. These are the instruments we hear on Within You Without You, Sgt. Pepper album. Like I mentioned, none of the other Beatles appear on this track. This is George Harrison's solo track with Indian musicians. But it's not the first time that Beatle records on his own. Another song by George, The Inner Light. Now this one actually is the unique one because it was recorded outside of Great Britain. It was recorded in India. And deep dive into that song I made on my channel in one of the previous videos, and link to that video you can find in the description section below and somewhere up here. Then we have another era of songs, the strings quartet or octet. First of all, we have the first time ever any Beatle recorded on his own. It was Yesterday by Paul McCartney, and that was the very first time George Martin, the producer, wrote string arrangement for the Beatles record. Another song that is worth mentioning is She's Leaving Home, once again from the Sgt. Pepper album. None of the Beatles actually play instruments there. We only have John and Paul vocals. But the instruments that we hear on this record are violins, cellos, harp, violas. And that song also is known for having first female performer ever on Beatles record, and she is Sheila Bromberg, playing on harp. Another very interesting fact about the song She's Leaving Home: by the time this song was arranged, the basic track was arranged, George Martin was not available and Paul McCartney didn't want to wait. So he actually invited another producer. His name is Mike Lender. He produced many records, many artists. I'm not going to get into that, but he also was executive producer for one of my favorite albums, rock operas, Jesus Christ Superstar. So it's a very pleasant fact. He is the only producer other than George Martin to produce Beatles record. Basic track. Very interesting. Another song that doesn't have guitars on it is Eleanor Rigby. It has 8 classical string players. Another instrument that is not rare for rock music, but it's not really something that you use on every song. This is harmonica. That instrument was used by John in the early stages of Beatles, in Love Me Do, and also it's I Should Have Known Better, and on Please Please Me, and also Bob Dylan used it quite often, but it's not really a typical rock and roll instrument. Next, the toys. Now we are going into the household objects. Toys and sound effects. We hear them on Yellow Submarine. Chains, bells, whistles, horns, and many other objects. And also Abbey Road studio staff was also participating. The Beatles turned actually the studio into playground, and all those noises you actually hear on the record. Another very strange instrument, so-called instrument. On Lovely Rita, in the end, you actually hear some buzzing noise. And this is not an instrument. This is a toilet paper on a comb. And all 4 of them were actually blowing into the comb and make this buzzing sound. I tried to recreate that thing, but I am not gonna record that on my video because it's insane. But actually that's true. Also there was piano strings and tape manipulations, and this was not an accident. That was completely intentional. Another interesting thing, the beginning, the guitar type intro of the song Bungalow Bill isn't actually a guitar at all. And this information I heard it by myself when I was in the Studio 2, Abbey Road, and there was a lecture, and producers were, telling the story of Abbey Road Studios, and they actually told us that the intro that you hear on the Bungalow Bill in the beginning, it's not a guitar at all, and it was not played by a human. It was a mellotron through a machine, mechanically triggered sound. That was very interesting. I was really surprised to hear that. It was in 2019, by the way. Almost 7 years ago? 6.5 years ago. It sounds like a guitar, but it's actually a machine pretending to be one. Here is a new invention. Another very interesting sound we hear on the song called Maxwell Silver Hammer. They actually played real Tool, Paul striking metal with a hammer. And actually, we can see that on the Beatles' Let It Be movie that was released in 1970. We actually see that, but it is Mel Evans playing that with a hammer. So they recreated that a couple of months later on the Abbey Road Maxwell Silver Hammer sessions. Another interesting tool, so-called, once again, tool, is on the song Mother Nature's Son, and maybe also on Blackbird, we actually hear a tapping. So it's either shoes tapping or somebody's tapping with their hands, but still, what you hear is not an instrument. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. And last but not least, one instrument that was used only once, and it's a very unique one and it's a very rare one. On the song Real Love, that was recorded in 1996 and released in 1996, Paul McCartney actually plays the original Elvis Presley bass that was originally played by Bill Black. Paul McCartney owns that bass and it was given to him by Linda in late 70s, and he actually uses that bass on the song Real Love. That's one of the most unique instruments ever recorded on the Beatles record. I'm not talking about the sound effects and tapes and loops that were used in Tomorrow Never Knows and some other stuff. I wanted to talk about only the rare, objects. Well, that's about it. That's what I wanted to talk about in this little short video. I just wanted to point out that Beatles didn't ask which instrument should we use. They were asking what sound does it make or what sound do we need for our songs. They were always inventing new things, and that's what makes Beatles so special to this day. Thank you very much for watching. If I missed anything, any strange object or instrument or sound on the Beatles record, I might have. Please tell me in the comment section below, and I'm really waiting for your comments, for your likes, and if you're a newcomer to this channel, please subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Thank you, bye-bye.